I think he's running out of cash, or maybe people don't want to give him money. Like, who would want to get involved with this?
It's interesting. There was a Financial Times story yesterday that showed that Donald Trump's, the number of contributors have dropped $200,000. If you look at this point in the cycle 4 years ago with where he is right now, he has lost already 200,000 donors.
Why do you think they don't want to pay his legal bills? They don't trust that he won't use the money for his legal bills?
Well,
there's a lot of legal bills.
I think I think there is the understanding that if they're giving him money, they're not giving him money to help whatever he says, help make America great again. They're giving him money because of the fact that a judge said he raped a woman, and he's going to have to pay her about $90 million.
$83.3 million for defamation, sexual assault.
Because his own lawyer decided she didn't want a jury trial, and so they had a judge trial in a fraud case, and Donald Trump was found guilty of what he's done for years.
But then there's the civil fraud trial. Oh, my gosh. That's like bankrupting.
Well, that's what I'm saying. So you have all this money, and so people are going, wait a second, am I giving to him? Am I giving to, like, Jim and Tammy Faye Baker, like some PTL-type scam to help pay this guy's bills? And what you're seeing is, again, the number of his contributors going down. I think there's also just natural attrition. There are a lot of people that I know that voted for Trump twice. We talk about it all the time. After January the 6th, after the craziness of the past couple of years, after saying that he's going to assassinate his political rivals if he wants to, and nobody can do anything about it, after he's saying he's going to execute American generals, American war heroes, because they're not sufficiently loyal to him. All of this stuff adds up. And at some point, there's an exhaustion factor that sets in. And I think we're seeing it in Donald Trump's money.
Well, he's burning through his donors' funds, with his super PAC spending far more in January than it brought in. As the Daily Beast reports, nearly $3 million of the overall spending was used for one purpose: to pay lawyers. The campaign itself was also underwater. It raised about $8.8 million while spending over $11 million. Nikki Haley, meanwhile, flashed with a sign of strength, with her campaign reporting $11.5 million in receipts last month. It is the first ever fundraising period where Haley's campaign outraised Donald Trump.
Let's stop there for 1 minute.
Yeah, stop right there. Let's repeat it.
Nikki Haley outraised Donald Trump last month in fundraising.
After all of his efforts to try and undermine her and spread gossip about her husband, and also she seems to be just plugging along there. She's going to hang in there and be the last woman standing, depending on what happens. It's probably a good gamble.
You know, we have a lot more to talk about in this story, but I want to stop for 1 second and go to Sam Stein. And Sam, feel free to talk about, if you want to talk about Trump having less donors than before, 200,000 less, if you have any theories on that. But I just want to stop for a second and look at the fact that the month that Donald Trump threatened Republicans, and man, that reverberated. People don't understand, that reverberated around the Republican Party. Karl Rove's talking about it this morning in a Wall Street Journal op-ed. It reverberated. Donald Trump saying, basically, I'm going to crush you if you give Nikki Haley any money. What did that do? It caused Nikki Haley's donations to rise. And Sam, talk about the fact Nikki Haley outraised Donald Trump last month.
Yeah, I mean, that's pretty surprising. I think, we all expected Donald Trump to raise a ton of money. Obviously, he has the largest fan base in Republican politics, and not just, any fan base, a sort of rabid fan base that kind of rallies behind him. So theories as to why he has done worse than she has in this latest month. I think you guys hit on the main one, which is, the money. People are, nervous that the money is going to be going to non-political functions, obviously the legal stuff. But, it's weird because obviously the polls show him doing well relative to Biden. But if you're on the ground, we followed his campaign in New Hampshire and elsewhere, you can tell, this is not as enthusiastic a run as 4 years ago or 8 years ago, you guys remember that arena in Manchester, right? In 2016, it sold out, right? To the rafters, the entire thing was sold out. I went again this cycle. They had a huge curtain to cut off about a quarter of the arena, and they didn't have the top sections. No one was allowed to sit there. Just thought to myself that, the enthusiasm is not quite the same. And I think that hurts Trump on the donor level, too, because he has been so reliant on small dollar donations in a way that other Republicans can't. I don't think, just to be clear, I don't think any of this translates necessarily into the primary polls being affected. I think Haley is not going to win in South Carolina. There's very few opportunities for her to win any state, frankly, and the delegate math doesn't add up. But what it does do is, to the degree she wants to continue running and continue losing these states, she can do it. Because campaigns don't end, they run out of cash. And her campaign is not running out of cash. So she can sustain an operation. She can just sit there, be a thorn in his side. I don't know to what end. But that's what this money dynamic does do to the race.
Boy, I'll tell you what, Willie, there are a lot of politicians that would love to be in Nikki Haley's position right now. I'm sure she's looking at it as a war of attrition. Donald Trump has so much in front of him. We don't know what's going to happen over the next 2, 3, 4 months between now and the convention. Anything can happen on the Republican side with all of these trials, with all of these judgments, with all of his financial woes. Anything can happen. But you look at Nikki Haley and the fact that she outraised Trump last month, and then look at Trump. And this is something people love to talk about. Oh, well, Biden's base isn't as excited as they should be. I'm pretty sure if you look at the last 7 years, just look at data, look at history, they'll get there. But with Donald Trump, the stories we don't hear are the stories that Sam just said. And that is arenas half full, venue sizes being shrunk and reduced far below where he was in 2016. He still has his diehards. There is no doubt about that. He still has a movement, no doubt about that. But that movement has shrunk, and we haven't really seen that as much in reporting as we have focus on, hey, what's the base think about Joe Biden? But right now, I mean, you look at the fact, again, Financial Times
Remember his crowd size situation in the first campaign?
Yeah, well, that's what we were just saying.
Crowds. They were
just massive. But,
I don't see those pictures.
But I'll tell you what freaks Trump out even more is the fact that his small donors, which is absolutely critical in campaigns, small donors have dropped by 200,000 people. 200,000 donors from this part of the campaign to about 4 years ago.
Yeah, that's a staggering number you cited from the Financial Times out with a report. In the second half of 2019, Donald Trump had 740,000 donors. In the second half of 2023, so 4 years later, ahead of election year, he had 516,000 donors. Contrary to that, Joe Biden his number of donors have gone up a bunch since 4 years ago at this time. So, yeah, I mean, you're right. Donald Trump is asking his voters, asking his base to fund this self-proclaimed billionaire to fund his legal bills. That's what the money goes to. And it looks like a lot of people are saying, that's not really what I'm in this for. I don't want to give my money so that you can pay off all these more than $500 million now, if you add it all up,